Hello there, this is Sherry Hayes with MomDelights.com, and today we are going to go through an introductory and a few lessons in this book, McGuffey's Fifth Eclectic Reader. So I've been doing a series on using the McGuffey's readers and how to go about it, and I'm also trying to read the lessons aloud to make it easier for moms to do. Now I've already gone through an introduction to the original second reader and the revised fourth reader, so look for those videos. This is the fifth reader. This is the one I go to after the fourth, and the sixth is really good too. It's more on a collegiate level. It's kind of like if you're going to get a master's degree, that's what you would be reading. I've had children that read that, and it's got very interesting stuff in it. But anyway, so I'm going to do an introduction here, and it's going to be very basic, and then I'm going to try to at least read one lesson to you. They're a little longer and more involved than the others, but maybe it'll give you a flavor as to how to use this book. Okay, now I have published, and I also have free pages on my website, MomDelights.com, that explain how you can do a McGuffey's lesson at these levels. And basically what I include is I try to include some copy work, some dictation, and some narration. And also just some original sentence writing with the vocabulary words. And if you go there, you'll find all about it. It's called The Lesson Book, and I have different levels. I think that by the time you're in the fifth eclectic reader, you're like in the fifth level of the lesson book. But anyway, so how this book is set up. Now, this book was originally published in 1879 by, Van Antwerp Bragg and Company. Okay, so it's not like the original McGuffeys were done in the 1830s. This was done, and the McGuffey readers, I mean, there were millions of copies in print. Everybody used to use McGuffey readers to learn how to read and write. Okay, now they have an introduction here. You could read this on your own, and here's the contents page. They have preliminary remarks, and they have articulation and how to read poetry and all that. And so this could be kind of interesting if you wanted to go over it real quick, but I think most of us, we just want to get to the meat of the lessons, so we'll just skip that part and we'll go to something called the Good Reader. Okay, so this is all of that. And it's a little bit in here, you know, it's not a number of pages, and it explains how to read poetry and stuff, which might be interesting. I normally just go to the lesson. It takes a while. Okay, I'm getting there. All righty then. Okay. See, and now, as usual, there are some beautiful illustrations in here. However, there aren't as many as were in the fourth reader. Like here's one. And like I said, if you're getting a facsimile copy, the illustrations aren't as clear or crisp, but they're still really good. They're kind of a little muddy. Here's one. So aren't they beautiful? I love these old etchings, don't you? Okay, so let me just read here. The Good Reader. Okay, this is a really neat story. So what you can do is you can go wash your dishes, whatever. I'm going to read this first lesson to you, and it pretty much goes the same as the McGuffey's fourth eclectic reader, where you have the definitions here, and there's some notes often about like the author or what was going on at the time, which kind of ties everything in. So it's kind of interesting to do that. So anyway, I'll just let you do that. I'm going to just read the lesson, and you can go wash dishes or something. Okay. It is told of Frederick the Great, King of Prussia, that as he was seated one day in his private room, a written petition was brought to him with a request that it should be immediately read. The king had just returned from hunting, and the glare of the sun or some other cause had so dazzled his eyes that he found it difficult to make out a single word of the writing. His private secretary happened to be absent, and the soldier who brought the petition could not read. There was a page or favorite boy servant waiting in the hall, and upon him the king called. The page was the son of one of the noblemen of the court, but proved to be a very poor reader. In the first place, he did not articulate distinctly. He huddled his words together in the utterance as if they were syllables of one long word, which he must get through with as speedily as possible. In the first place, he did not articulate distinctly. he huddled his words together in the utterance, as if they were syllables of one long word, which he must get through with as speedily as possible. His pronunciation was bad, and he did not modulate his voice so as to bring out the meaning of what he read. Every sentence was uttered with a dismal monotony of voice, as if it did not differ in any respect from that which preceded it. "Stop!" said the king impatiently. "Is it an auctioneer's list of goods to be sold that you are hurrying over? Send your companion to me." Another page, who stood at the door, now entered, and to him the king gave the petition. The second page began by hemming and clearing his throat in such an affected manner that the king jokingly asked him whether he had not slept in the public garden with the gate open the night before. The second page had a good share of self-conceit, however, and so was not greatly confused by the king's jest. He determined that he should avoid the mistake which his comrade had made. So he commenced reading the petition slowly and with great formality, emphasizing every word and prolonging the articulation of every syllable. But his manner was so tedious that the king cried out, "Stop! Are you reciting a lesson in the elementary sounds? Out of the room! But no, stay. Send me that little girl who is sitting there by the fountain." Okay. The girl thus pointed out by the king was a daughter of one of the laborers employed by the royal gardener, and she had come to help her father weed the flower beds. It chanced that, like many of the poor people in Prussia, she had received a good education. She was somewhat alarmed when she found herself in the king's presence, but took courage when the king told her that he only wanted her to read for him, as his eyes were weak. Now, Ernestine, for this was the name of the little girl, was fond of reading aloud, and often many of the neighbors would assemble at her father's house to hear her. Those who could not read themselves would come to her also with their letters from distant friends or children, and she thus formed the habit of reading various sorts of handwriting promptly and well. The king gave her the petition, and she rapidly glanced through the opening lines to get some idea of what it was about. As she read, her eyes began to glisten and her breast to heave. "What is the matter?" asked the king. "Don't you know how to read?" "Oh, yes, sire," she replied, addressing him with the title usually applied to him. "I will now read it, if you please." The two pages were about to leave the room. "Remain," said the king. The little girl began to read the petition. It was from a poor widow, whose only son had been drafted to serve in the army, although his health was delicate and his pursuits had been such as to unfit him for the military life. His father had been killed in battle, and the son had a strong desire to become a portrait painter. The writer told her story in a simple, concise manner that carried to the heart a belief of its truth, and Ernestine read it with so much feeling, and with an articulation so just, in tones so pure and distinct, that when she had finished, the king, into whose eyes the tears had started, exclaimed, "Oh, now I understand what it is all about. But I might never have known, certainly I never should have felt, its meaning had I trusted to these young gentlemen, whom I now dismiss from my service for 1 year, advising them to occupy their time in learning to read. As for you, my young lady," continued the king, "I know you will ask no better reward for your trouble than the pleasure of carrying to this poor widow my order for her son's immediate discharge. Let me see whether you can write as well as you can read. Take this pen and write as I dictate." He then dictated an order, which Ernestine wrote, and he signed. Calling one of his guards, he bade him go with the girl and see that the order was obeyed. How much happiness was Ernestine the means of bestowing through her good elocution, united to the happy circumstance that brought it to the knowledge of the king! First, there were her poor neighbors, to whom she could give instruction and entertainment. Then there was the poor widow who sent the petition, and who not only regained her son, but received through Ernestine an order for him to paint the king's likeness, so that the poor boy soon rose to great distinction, and had more orders than he could attend to. Words could not express his gratitude, and that of his mother, to the little girl. And Ernestine had, moreover, the satisfaction of aiding her father to rise in the world, so that he became the king's chief gardener. The king did not forget her, but had her well educated at his own expense. As for the 2 pages, she was indirectly the means of doing them good also, for, ashamed of their bad reading, they commenced studying in earnest till they overcame the faults that had offended the king. Both finally rose to distinction. one as a lawyer and the other as a statesman, and they owed their advancement in life chiefly to their good elocution. Isn't that a great story? And besides that, there's so much. It's so rich. So you could you could work on character. Like Jesus said, if you're faithful in little, I'll make you faithful in much. And these young men, she was faithful in her little bit. She just read aloud to the people where she lived, and God used her for great things. And the pages, the same thing. Once they learned that it matters, the little things matter, then they went on to do great things as well. Then also the historical aspect. This is about, and it has a note on Frederick II of Prussia, who lived from 1712 to 1788, and that would be a study in itself. Now this has a glowing report of him. Not everybody thought that what he did was very good. He was really very military, and he's the one that kind of pushed his people to be militaristic even in their family life. So I mean, there's good and bad about that, but you could find that out. See, there's a historical study here, but this is a good story. This is a good character study, and there's all kinds of history. So you see basically how this would go for your child. Now, I can go ahead and I continue to read these stories aloud to you if you think that would help you as far as, because sometimes what happens is if we assign these to a child, we don't have time to read them ourselves. But if I read them aloud to you, maybe you can just listen while you're washing dishes or whatever, and that can help you know what their lessons are about, even if they're not reading aloud to you. So it just helps. I might do that. I don't know if I will or not. But anyway, I gave you at least an understanding of how to do this and what the lessons are about. And I just like reading them just because they're fun. I mean, there's just so much you can learn. Now remember the sentence structure is a little more complicated, and you're going to have some vocabulary that's challenging, but that's all great, isn't it? I mean, that'll keep them so they can read anything in their lives. They can read lawyer stuff. Lawyerese. All right. So anyway, you have a wonderful day. Please like and subscribe, and tell me what you think. Do you want me to continue with the fifth reader or not? Thank you. Bye-bye.